Returning now to the war in the Middle East, the US says it has struck 2,000 targets in Iran since the war began over the weekend. Overnight, a US submarine hit an Iranian naval ship in the Indian Ocean off Sri Lanka. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth gave this assessment.
They are toast, and they know it. Or at least, soon enough, they will know it.
A little earlier, I caught up with retired British Colonel Richard Kemp, who has commanded troops in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I started by asking whether he thinks Pete Hegseth's assessment is accurate.
Well, it certainly looks as if it's going that way. They've had enormous damage done to the top level of the regime and several layers below that, plus enormous devastation to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which props up the regime. It's not ended yet. But certainly the doors have been opened, I think, in Iran for oppositionists to bring this regime down if they're able to do so.
There have been fears that this conflict will expand exponentially and become another open-ended war. We've already seen Kurdish militants in Iraq reportedly launch an offensive into Iran, and we've seen the US sink this Iranian ship off the coast of Sri Lanka. Do you think those fears of an open-ended war are valid?
I don't really think so. I think we have seen Iran expanding the conflict by hitting out at its neighbours and others, including British targets in Cyprus and, of course, Turkey. We've seen some expansion of it, but this is their kind of knee-jerk reaction. I think in particular, if this regime is brought down, we're not going to see an extended, wide-scale war in the Middle East as a result of it. We may, unfortunately, and it depends how things work out, I don't think anyone can really predict. We may see chaos and violence in Iran, for some considerable time as a result of maybe the fall of the regime.
Well, on that, the Ayatollah's son, Mujtaba Khamenei, has already been reportedly elected Iran's next supreme leader. Do you see him lasting in this role? And if he did, what does that mean for the future of the Iranian people?
I think it's probably quite a short-term job. In his case, I suspect he will follow his father quite soon after he takes over. Obviously, we don't know that for sure, but I do believe that Israeli and US intelligence is so good in Iran at the moment that it has the capability of hitting pretty much anyone it needs to hit. So I would guess he's not that long in the chair. And if he is, we're also going to see, I suspect, infighting within the regime itself, people who maybe not approve of him, people who want somebody else to lead it. So we could see that. There are various rival factions within the Iranian regime and have been for a while.
Your Prime Minister in the UK, Sir Keir Starmer, he's refused to let the US use British bases to launch strikes in this conflict. Donald Trump has quipped he is no Winston Churchill. What is your response to Starmer's move here? Has it damaged the relationship the UK has with the US?
I certainly do think that. The US and Britain have had long-term a very special relationship as it's known. It's gone through good and bad over those years, but nothing, certainly in my experience, nothing comparable to what we've got now, where the US, as major ally in Europe, has refused to provide the essential support for US military operations in a very, very legitimate cause. And even Starmer himself has said that the Iranian regime needs to be brought down. And if you contrast him, for example, with the Australian and Canadian leaders, both of whom are on the left as well, and both of whom probably share some of Starmer's perspectives. But they were very quick to jump in support of Trump, and Starmer should have done the same. It's actually a national embarrassment what's happening in the UK at the moment. And in particular, after a drone strike on RAF Akrotiri, which is British sovereign territory in Cyprus, launched, it appears, from one of Iran's major proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, we haven't responded. There's been no response even to an attack, albeit there were no casualties, no severe damage done, but it was still an attack on British sovereign territory, and we've had no response to it.
What do you think is motivating Sir Keir Starmer to be so obstructionist?
Well, I think he's putting his party interests ahead of the national interest, and he has genuinely done very severe damage to the US-UK relationship because he's very concerned about his own support base, which is dominated by anti-Israel elements and anti-Western elements, including the hard left and the Islamist supporters of Labour. And he doesn't want and didn't want them to be able to say to him, you have been involved in attacking another Islamic country. And certainly the last thing he wants is to be seen to be doing anything alongside Israel for the same reason. So his domestic support base is currently dictating British foreign policy.
What do you think this conflict will mean for the Iranian regime's proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis? And will this make places like here in Australia safer when we know that Iran directed attacks on the Jewish community here?
Yeah, I mean, the Iranian proxies, Hamas, have already been very badly written down by Israel over the last 2 years. And the loss of their primary supporter, the Iranian Ayatollahs, is going to be devastating for them, particularly in morale terms. And I think many of them may decide the game is up, really, we're not going to fight on. And either way, the Israelis are likely to go in and finish them off after this campaign is finished. In Lebanon, the Israelis are currently attacking Hezbollah, which was also very badly damaged in the last couple of years. The Houthis the Houthis said they would join in this attack, but haven't done so yet that I'm aware of. But if they do, if they raise their heads, they're going to get it knocked off as well. And I think the overall effect of this and the 2-year war that's been fought so far by Israel is going to be to make the world safer, because let's not forget that since 1979, the Islamic Revolution in Iran inspired and in many cases supported the international global jihad, albeit that many of the jihadists were Sunni as opposed to Shia, which Iran is. That's not really an important point in this instance. That they've been inspired by the Iranian Revolution, and they've been reacting to it for the last nearly half a century. And I think the destruction of this regime may not end global jihad. It won't end global jihad, but at least it will weaken it, I believe.
Well, with that in mind, you're in the US right now. What is your view on elements within the MAGA movement and also among a lot of far-right commentators like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, who are criticizing Donald Trump and the US for taking this action and claiming it's Israel who's forcing the US's hand, even though Trump has denied this?
I think anybody who thinks that President Trump's hand can be forced by anybody is somewhat delusional. Certainly it wouldn't be forced by Israel. Of course, there's been joint planning and joint preparations for this operation between Israel and the United States. There had to be, and it was inevitable. It was right, there was. But this is the United States acting in their national interests, and the destruction of this regime is not just in Israel's interests, it's certainly in the United States' interests and the Western world's interests, because this regime has been spreading terror, as I said, for nearly half a century around the world. It's been developing a very, very dangerous ballistic missile program, which we've seen used already on its neighboring states as well as Israel. And they were working on a nuclear bomb. And of course, America could not allow this to continue, and therefore it was the right thing to do, despite what the anti-Trump elements on the right have to say.
Colonel Richard Kemp, thank you for your time and your insights.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.